The other thing is we've, in this area, have been recession-proof for forever because most of the employment is federal or government employee. And that has been rather a safe haven for many, many years. But now because the government itself is experiencing such huge deficits, they too are laying off. And when you have that situation, you don't cure it by raising taxes or spending more money. That is not the job of government to create jobs. Private sector creates jobs, at least the kind that grow the economy. And the private sector, small business, should be the ones that are being given the assistance through all kinds of, you know, programs like tax credits, et cetera. But instead, it isn't happening that way. The money for assistance is being given to the government. And that is unfortunate. First of all, it's money that we don't have. And it's just increasing the deficit. And so it's kind of a vicious cycle. I would say that Maryland has a $2 billion deficit. And then, you know, in order to try to accommodate that, you create new programs, and the state of the state, you know, is something that we all listen to, and we find out that there's going to be, and also the State of the Union. They're talking, both Obama and O'Malley are talking about new programs. Well, programs cost money. What we should be doing is eliminating some programs. Anyway, the more government grows, the bigger government gets, obviously, the more it costs. And the more it grows, individual freedoms, individual will, individual decision-making is taken away from the individual. The more decisions that are made by government and the fewer decisions that are required by the individual initiative, it stymies the development of the individual potential, and to me, it diminishes the person. It diminishes each and every one of us. The bigger government grows. And that, to me, is criminal.
Absolutely, Audrey. And that's absolutely what I can feel and see out there with people I deal with. The important thing is there's a lot of times people take things for granted because they don't think it affects them individually. Now, this recession is affecting us individually. Everything that's done on the state level, if their effort is to try to help, they've got to understand the basics that you just mentioned. And that is small businesses are the first to be affected. A lot of people don't realize. Many small businesses I know were affected with the gasoline price increases.
Perfect example.
And some companies literally had to, and many major employers, not just small businesses, but the one person that had one or two vehicles on the road, it hit their pocketbook directly. And yet some of the larger companies, would you believe, increased their prices and put it as a surcharge to cover the gasoline. Here again, the bigger companies could get by with that because if they lose a few customers, it didn't hurt them as much. If the small business person with 100 and 500 customers did that, it could very well affect the future of that business. So when they make decisions like that, they want to be sure, if a small business had to do it, that it would be temporary, that there's some reason for that price of that gasoline, and is it something we're not doing right? Well, there seems to be some attitude changes there about offshore drilling, and here again we're getting into national politics, but it affects us locally.
Of course it does, because it affects every day you go out and you need to buy gas at the tanks. It affects you locally.
And you know, it's a strange thing, but when you look at the stimulus that we've come to the state, I haven't really seen a record of how much new employment that started, and it's just on the line you're speaking about. I haven't seen, and if it was small, I'm sure we won't hear about it, and if it's large, I'd like to see the proof of it. And I do believe that more than ever, our representatives, that your representatives and others that are in there now, they've got to turn this around and thinking of and listen to their constituents more. And I think particularly Maryland's not been good at that. I think the
You're being kind. I want to say the first responsibility is obviously to listen. When you're an elected official, there's several things that are absolutely basic to that role. Number one, you listen to your constituents. Number two, you represent your constituents. And number three, you are the public servant. You work for your constituents. And it seems that there's a mindset that immediately takes over when someone gets elected, and I've been elected and I've fought very, very hard and aggressively against being captured by the system, and that is that you begin to think that they, the taxpayers, work for you, and that they, the taxpayers' money that they are mandated to provide our government belongs to you, the elected official. And it's exactly the opposite. But there's a mentality that takes over, and I think we're seeing the results of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just obvious that this is what's occurring now. We've seen it in other states, as you mentioned, and it happening so rapidly. You've got to give the public credit for one thing. Somewhere out there, they are coming to the conclusion that, look, we can make a difference. We control what my representative does. And they're getting some people to slow down, turn around and look. And all of this fast legislation coming in my opinion, was done on a design purpose. Let's get it done now before
people have a chance to read it.
That's right.
Well, they voted on it with the health care without reading it and understanding it. And the other thing is that the Tea Parties that have been grassroots, it's a grassroots movement. It's spontaneous, and it is a direct result and reaction to what's going on in Washington. People don't want this health care bill. And yet, even in the State of the Union that Obama gave the other night, he basically said, we're going to get it, we're going to get it right, we're going to do it. And the message is, no, we don't want it, don't do it.
That's right.
But he's not got the message.
Yeah, and that's sad. And you know, for people that believe in polls, they don't seem to believe the current polls. The citizens say 76%, I think, was one poll against the bill, period. Or that may have been the 34% probably for. And also Congress's situation, where they didn't seem to have ignored the polls, and all of a sudden these people have I've heard of years making their decisions on what the polls say, have quit even recognizing it, which means, I think, that people that are members of neighborhood groups or whatever, it doesn't have to be a Tea Party, they're realizing now their voice makes a difference, at least on the election day. Maybe the polling data didn't get them to respond, but the voting data did definitely, and we're seeing a change on it.
You're right. I think in Massachusetts, I just heard some figures, and don't quote me, but it's ballpark. I think in the primary they had 22% turnout, and in the general election, this was Republican.
Sure.
And in the general election, they had 54% turnout.
No.
So from the primary to the general, people woke up and they began to realize, hey, maybe we can make this happen. Maybe we really can make a difference, and
That's right.
maybe our vote counts. And I just want to tell everybody, your vote counts. And we really do all need to exercise that right, because what's happening with our governments, both at the state level and at the federal level, is not to our liking. And they don't seem to care what we think. So we've got to start over.
And you know, Audrey,
we've got to make a change.
That's right. I got to pass on a comment that I heard an elected official say to their staff. Is that person calling again? And I thought, well, as a business person, if that person's calling again for the manager, you better answer them, or that person's call turns into a complaint. And that was a while back, but it was.
But it stuck with you because it was
Absolutely.
so obnoxious.
Oh, it was just it was unbelievable. It's like,
right. I'm
here, I don't care anymore. Now we have some good elected officials, Audrey.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And, you know, I remember, and I now want to mention the fact that you were former mayor of Bowie, Maryland, where we're broadcasting this, and also you were county council, Prince George's County, 2 terms.